Alright, been a little bit since my last video. I believe the last one was on the 14th of January. So, go real quick. What have we missed since then? Had interviews. As in I sat in the student panel to kind of help answer some of their questions. That's always really cool to do. I like meeting the future students. Always really good. Try to make a good impression. If you're ever curious, at least the people in my class, we don't lie about anything. If we don't like something, we will just tell you that we don't like it. We're not going to try to butter anything up that doesn't need to be. So we're all pretty honest about all that. Well, we're obviously not disrespectful, but, you know, if we say like, oh yeah, we really don't like that there's not enough whiteboards, we'll just tell you that we don't like that. So, just wanted to go ahead and put that out there. So that was really cool. Ooh, my phone's being weird. There we go. Had first farm exam. First exam of the semester actually was farm. If you, I mean, I'm sure I've said it in the past, but farm is my least favorite subject, purely because I'm not that good at it. I don't do well with pure memorization. I do better with application. So, yeah. Kind of seems like you're either good at memorization or good at application, but you're not generally good at both. I fall into the camp of I'm not good at memorization, but I am good at application. So, you know, it's kind of one of those classes, you love it or you hate it. I'm just not a fan of it, honestly. So, we also had a site visit, which what that means is a nearby location, hospital, anesthesia group, whatever you want to call it. They come by and they basically give us their pitch of like, hey, here's why you should pick us, and here's our salary, here's our PTO, here's everything like that. So just kind of stuff like that. Pretty cool. Seems like these people have a good package. Haven't ruled them out. They're not at the top of my list just because of location, but they're competitive. I'll put it like that. So really cool to get to see that. The big thing was clinicals have started. So, in essence, what that means is now I'm in the process of being able to go to my clinical site and start to do the hands-on portion of the learning. So, it's not just all reading textbooks anymore, it's actually going out and doing those things. So, to kind of go over that a little bit, there are certain things I can and cannot talk about. So, I made this little presentation. So, what is HIPAA and PHI? HIPAA is basically saying that your health information should be private. It can't be shared for unless it's like a really good reason, it can't be given out. And then in that, what is the protected health information? It's basically just anything that can be used to identify an individual. So what are potential identifiers? Names, locations, any dates, phone number, fax number, email, social security, medical record number, health insurance plan, any account number, driver's license, vehicle identifiers, device identifiers, URLs, IP addresses, fingerprint, voice print, full face photographic images, and then any other uniquely identifiable number. So with that, I am obviously legally, contractually, morally obligated to not disclose any of this. So I won't. So here's a patient scenario, and this is again a hypothetical patient. So patient name, Jane Doe. Here are the providers who will be working, CAA, and then we'll call this guy the anesthesiologist, this guy the MD, RN. There's your procedure, comorbidities, and then what I performed during the case. So, what might I share with you all? Really, I'm only going to be sharing what I performed. I don't want to get into any of this other stuff. Now, you can see that showed right there, but I'm an obvious lady. I don't have access to their medical records. So this would be really hard to provide because I don't have access. But anyway, we talk about what I performed. The most I will say for something like patient history is their ASA status to kind of give you an idea of the patient's level of health I've been dealing with. Procedure, that's a maybe, but it's a probably not. I just don't want to get remotely close. So, just be aware that I will never disclose this. I might talk about that a little bit if it's something that's generic enough. Most I'll say for AS or for patient histories or ASA, healthcare providers only if I get express permission from them, which I don't really want to ask, so you're not going to know that. So I just want to get that out of the way. So with that all being said, what did I do for clinicals? So day one, go and get lost day, find your way around the hospital, find your parking, get your ID, get your badge, find your lockers, and just do all that kind of stuff. Day two, we were meant to actually get in the ORs. Weather happened, good old ice storm in Florida, so we weren't able to go out and do that, so that day got canceled. So this week / last week, I was actually able to go out and do stuff. So what did I do? So I got to do a couple ortho procedures and then a robotic procedure. Now again, for procedure, I'm going to be very generic. Ortho could be anything from rhinoplasty to broken femur to trauma because their femur broke to a knee replacement to a toe amputation. Technically, I think it was ortho. But anyway, just keeping it very generic. So one of the days I did ortho. For those days, I was there for the first case and then left halfway through the second case because it was getting late and I was dismissed. So, with that being said, what did I do? So I got to do 2 McGrath intubations. You can look up what the McGrath laryngoscope is. Basically, it's a standard laryngoscope, but it has a little camera on it. So rather than having to look into the mouth, you can look at the screen, and then you can see the cords, and then put in your endotracheal tube accordingly. So great for learning. Very happy that I had access to that. So did that for both of the cases. Case 1 did a lot of intra-op management, managing vital signs and things like that. Kind of trying to just get everything to stabilize. There was some intraoperative issues with, I believe, blood pressure. We had to kind of modulate a little bit and figure out how that was all going to be working. So I believe for that case we had to run a neo drip, kind of try to get that stabilized, and overall not too bad. Once we got everything settled in, things went fairly smoothly. No real big issues in that. So I did the induction, obviously under strict guidance and strict supervision. I helped out with intra-op stuff. It was kind of hard to get in my preceptor's head and figure out how they wanted certain vital signs to look. But I would try to point things out like, hey, is the blood pressure a little bit too low? And then, do you think we should treat it with ephedrine? Do you think we should do that? So that was kind of like that back and forth. Kind of gave them the opportunity to say, oh, actually, no, I don't want to do that because of this. Or, yeah, it's a good idea. Why don't you go ahead and do that? So that was pretty cool. I did attempt an IV on this individual. That was my second ever attempt at getting somebody an IV. I got the very first one during our practice session in class. I missed it on this individual. I just went a little bit to the side, which, is my second ever attempt. Can't win them all. So I'm 50-50 right now. So not bad, I guess, but could be a lot better. So, got to see a TIVA, kind of like a half TIVA, a dirty TIVA, where it was using some volatile, some propofol drip to kind of get the best of both worlds. So that was pretty cool to see. And then standard wake-up procedure for that. The gas took forever to get off. We were using ISO. Took a while to get it off, and that was one of the things that my preceptor was trying to show me was, hey, look, we cut the gas 15 minutes ago, and they've still got some in their system. It's like, oh, okay, it kind of shows you how hard the timing can be. The other ortho procedure, again, I got to do the intubation on that. This is the one that I left, or I was able to leave, asked to leave, told to leave, whatever, about halfway through. I got to do the McGrath intubation again on that one. This one was another dirty TIVA. I struggled with bag masking on this individual. I mean, they were I can say the number, I guess, but it was within the first 5 people that I'd ever tried to bag mask, so I'm not good at the CE grip. I struggled to get my pinky underneath the angle of the mandible. Got a decent seal after a minute. I feel like I'm being too gentle. I'm not getting enough grab on their mandible, so it's kind of hard for me to find that balance. But I'd rather be too gentle and work up the pressure than too hard right off the bat and then shoot myself in the foot. So we used an oral airway on that one because I just wasn't able to move air, and there's no harm in just throwing in an oral airway. So got that one intubated again. There was a concern with the intubation on this patient. Had to be very careful. That was under, again, the strict supervision of the attending. The attending guided me and told me exactly what he wanted me to do, left no room for interpretation, and I just made sure to do it. He said, all right, you need to do this, and I said, yes, sir, and then I did it, and he's like, all right, again, yes, sir, and then we got it just fine. So a little bit nerve-wracking on that one. All ended up going well. I asked my preceptor, and they said that this patient was an ASA 4, which meant that there was going to be another level of heightened, okay, we need to be cautious in how all this is going. Got to see a little bit of the interop management, but this person's blood pressure did stabilize fairly easily. Slightly hypotensive in the beginning, continual bumps of small dose neo, no change. Normal dose neo, no change. Ephedrine, little change. Ended up just running a neo infusion on them. They had a concern where we couldn't get them to be tachycardic, so it was kind of leaning more towards neo in this case, just running that drip. I think I already said it was a dirty TIVA, so the hypotensive concerns, it was just a very fine balancing act because of the reasons that they were ASA4. You couldn't get any of their values too high in one respect or too low in the other. You just had to find that middle. So I just kind of deferred to my preceptor and, kind of tried to hear him out and what he was saying. And, just kind of trying to do what I could, do what I knew I could do, and do what I knew how to do. So I'll put it like that. So that was one of the days. One of the other days, got to do, I was able to watch a robotic surgery. Robotic surgeries have their own huge list of precautions. The 2 at the top of the list are don't let the patient move and then don't touch the bed. And by don't touch the bed, I mean if you raise the bed, you're driving the person's body into the robotic arms, which you can imagine would be very much not good. So profound muscle relaxation was one of the key components that we made sure to keep an eye on for that. So did a CMAC intubation on this individual. So CMAC, so the McGrath, the screen is actually on the laryngoscope. CMAC, it's actually like a fiber optic, so you have to look at a different monitor to see where you're at. I struggled to get the tube in this patient, again, just being too gentle. My attending did it almost without thinking. So that all went fine. Secured the tube, whole 9 yards, everything again. Yeah. I bag masked the patient initially before the intubation. I'm just kind of talking out of my order. Introp management again. This one was a full blown TIVA. So it was zero volatile agent. That was the first time I'd ever seen one. Doing a full TIVA, so that was kind of cool. Standard introp management, had some concerns a little bit of the way through. A couple things were a little bit screwy, had to figure them out, did figure them out with the help of my attending and my preceptor. Extubation, all that good stuff. Basically a full case through and through. It did end up taking, it was a longer case. But robotic surgeries just purely take longer. So I'm definitely in the learning phase. A lot of my mistakes, I'm not gonna say like, oh, they're haunting me, but I keep thinking about the mistakes I made and, oh, it was a stupid thing to do, why'd you do that? But I also have to remember, I've only been in the operating room as a student who can hands-on do stuff like less than a handful of times. So it's really hard to... I'm not going to say like, oh, I expected to be perfect. I had hoped I would be able to help out more. And I am trying to help out when I can. I'm asking, hey, what can I be doing right now? What would you like me to do? I see this is happening. Should we do this? But again, it's just I don't have that baseline knowledge yet. So it's kind of hard to get to that point. But that just comes with time. A couple of the mistakes I made were just silly mistakes. And that just comes from lack of experience. Like, I drew up ephedrine wrong. I diluted it incorrectly because I did it 1 into 11 instead of 1 into 9 because I did it in the wrong order. So it's just silly stuff like that where looking back on it, I'm like, why did I do that? But again, that's just the stage of learning that I'm at. Nobody's expecting me to be perfect, but the fact that I'm not is making me question myself, if that makes sense. I have very high expectations of myself, probably higher than anybody else in the world. And that's kind of a challenge when I'm bad at something. And I'm not going to say like, oh, I'm bad at being a student, or oh, I'm a bad anesthesia provider. I am incredibly and profoundly inexperienced. So with that, there's some obvious drawbacks. So I just lack the real world experience, and that's kind of the obstacle I've been running into. But the main thing I can do is, as one of my preceptors put it, just learn 2 or 3 good things each time you are at your clinicals, and then by the end of the week, by the end of the month, by the end of the year, you will be leaps and bounds further than you thought you could ever be. And I really like that advice from them. So just going to try to keep that in mind. The mistakes I'm making now are learning opportunities more than anything else. They're not worth beating myself up over. I mean, I do want to beat myself up over them just because it's the nature of who I am. I can make a small mistake and I'll think about it for a week, as you can see. It's just something I'm going to have to get over. My mistakes did not hurt patients at all. They did not compromise patient health safety. And I caught all of the mistakes pretty quickly. So, just kind of frustrating. I wanted to be better than I am. But I sit here and ask myself, okay, why aren't you as good as you thought? It's like, well, I just don't have the experience. And that's nobody's fault. It's just the nature of it. I kind of have to accept that I'm going to be bad at this for a little while. Which is obviously why I'm not the primary person who's in charge of this, because I don't know what I'm doing yet. I have an idea and I can kind of get there in the end, but in the meantime, it's kind of a struggle. So I just got to keep plugging and chugging at it, doing what I can. I definitely feel like each time I've been back in the operating room, I've kind of been able to see that improvement. I've been able to see the slight confidence. A lot of this to me feels like a what happens next game. And I'm at the point where I can kind of start to see like, okay, this is going to happen next. but I'm not so good at like anticipating it before it happens yet. Part of that is because I don't know all the procedures in and out. So let's pick a random procedure. Let's just say it's a lap chole or laparoscopic cholecystectomy. I can kind of figure out the order of things. I was like, okay, incision, and then you put in the ports, and then you know, insufflate, removal, closure, all that good stuff in that order. But I don't know the nuance of it yet, so I don't know like, oh, once I see they're doing this, I know we're 30 minutes out and I can do that. I don't have that skill yet because that's not really a skill you can build in a classroom. So it's kind of frustrating, but I am seeing the benefit of it, the reward aspect of it. I didn't expect to feel this incompetent. The best way I can put it is imagine spending a month of your life reading how to drive a car. You can sit there, you can read about it like, okay, you know, press the pedal gently at first and then do this, and then, oh, right on red, but not all the time, and then, you know, you have to use your blinker, and here's how you merge, and here's what this sign means, and here's what that sign means. It's like, okay, yeah, I kind of understand it. But then the moment you sit down in that car, it's like, oh, it's just not what I had in my head anymore. And it's... Now, there will be some of it that carries over directly, such as, oh, I know what that sign means. Oh, I know what that sign means. You know, that's a speed limit. That means railroad crossing. That's a yield sign. That means your lane's ending. That means there's a roundabout. So there are some aspects that will carry over perfectly. There are some aspects that will carry over a little bit. Like, I don't know, like how to yield or how to merge, right? You read about yielding, it's like, okay, if a car is approaching, all right, you need to wait, and then you have an open opportunity to turn right on red. And you're like, oh, okay, so I can see that car's coming, I'm not going to go. Okay, they just went, there's nobody behind them, I can go now. That kind of carries over. You still lack things like the depth perception and ability to say, like, oh, they're going about 30 miles an hour, I have plenty of time, let me go ahead and go. And there are some things that won't carry over at all from a book, such as, how much pressure do I need to put on the gas? How soon do I need to start stopping? At what point should you stop if you see a yellow light? So if you're on all the way green and it turns yellow last second, you have to make that judgment call. That doesn't come from a textbook. And it's just things, the walls I'm running into are that I just don't know how to drive yet. I've read about driving. I understand driving. I can tell you how to drive in a textbook. But I don't know how to touch that car yet. So, that's the frustrating part. I know it will happen eventually. I know that one day it'll be like, oh, I was just driving and I had no idea, I zoned out. But right now it's taking my full consciousness. Which is probably how it should be. So, I'm just trying to not beat myself up over the small mistakes and just trying to let myself learn from them. So, it's a struggle, but I'm gonna get there. And I mean, I've got a full semester of this, so I've got plenty of time to get better at it. And that's the goal, right? Is to be a little bit better than you were yesterday. And I think that's all that the preceptors are really expecting. They're not expecting us to come in there like a rock star, like we've been doing it since we were 4 years old. And if they are, they're in for a surprise. I appreciate that. I like the learning environment that this location is giving me. So I'll go ahead and leave it at that. I think I've said a good bit. For any specific advice, I might make a video dedicated to how to prepare for clinicals, what I wish I knew, what I know now, things I did that worked well, things I did that worked poorly. I might make that video, but I'll go ahead and end this one here. We're looking at about 25 minutes, so I hope you have a great day. I hope this video was somewhat insightful for you and, could maybe help you out on your journey. So have a good one.